What happens when the leader of a state's police department becomes the target of racial profiling by her own officer? This wasn't just an incident, it became a turning point that left an entire system shaken. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Let's go back to where it all began. Detective Rachel Harrison, newly appointed as the director of the state police department, was a woman of quiet authority. At 37, her sharp mind, unyielding determination, and no-nonsense demeanor had earned her the respect of her peers. As one of the few black women to hold such a position, she carried not just the weight of her title, but the expectations of countless others who saw her as a symbol of progress. That evening, Rachel was on her way home after a grueling day. Carrying a bag of groceries, she walked toward her car parked under a dimly flickering streetlight. The cold night air carried a sense of unease, but Rachel was used to moving through the world with her head held high. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind her. "Hey, you there, stop." Rachel turned to see Officer Jackson Myers striding toward her. A 42-year-old patrolman with a spotless uniform and a rigid stance, Myers carried himself with an air of authority. His hand rested on his holstered weapon, a silent but clear message. Rachel's instincts kicked in. She kept her voice steady. "Can I help you, officer?" "This is a high-theft area," Myers replied curtly. "I need to see some ID." Rachel blinked, momentarily stunned. "Excuse me, ID?" Myers repeated, his tone firmer now. Rachel stood her ground. The street, though quiet, was not empty. A few pedestrians had stopped, their eyes darting between Rachel and Myers. The tension in the air was palpable. Slowly, Rachel reached into her pocket and pulled out her wallet. She handed over her driver's license. "Detective Rachel Harrison," she said evenly, her tone measured. Myers glanced at the ID, his expression hardening. "Detective, huh? Well, even detectives can find themselves in places they shouldn't be." Rachel felt her patience wearing thin. She knew what this was, a clear case of racial profiling, but she refused to let her emotions take over. "Officer Myers, I've done nothing wrong, and I'm not inclined to entertain this harassment," she said, her voice steady. "Is there a specific reason you're stopping me?" Before Myers could respond, another officer arrived on the scene. The younger man, barely out of training, approached with visible nervousness. "Everything okay here, Myers?" the younger officer asked cautiously. "Just handling a situation," Myers replied, still fixated on Rachel. The younger officer glanced at Rachel, then at the ID in Myers' hand. His face paled as recognition dawned. "Myers," he said quietly, "you might want to take another look at that." Myers frowned, flipping the ID again. His eyes widened. Rachel, maintaining her composure, pulled out her badge and held it up. "I'm Director Rachel Harrison," she said, her voice firm. "You're superior, and you're seconds away from a disciplinary review." The murmurs from the gathering crowd grew louder. Myers stumbled over his words, but Rachel had already turned her attention to the younger officer. "Take over here," she instructed curtly, "and make sure this doesn't happen again." As Rachel walked away, she could hear Myers mumbling excuses, but she didn't look back. By the time she reached her car, her hands were steady, but her mind raced. By morning, the incident was all over social media. Several bystanders had recorded the exchange, and the videos quickly went viral. Hashtags like #JusticeForRachel and #EndRacial Profiling trended across platforms. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines such as "Top Cop Racially Profiled by Her Own Officer" and "Systemic Racism in Law Enforcement Exposed in Real Time." The videos were damning, showing Myers' aggressive demeanor and Rachel's calm but commanding responses. Opinion pieces flooded the internet. Some demanded Myers' immediate dismissal, while others labeled the incident as routine policing. The public was divided, but one thing was clear: this wasn't going away anytime soon. At the police department, the atmosphere was tense. Rachel's phone buzzed non-stop with emails, messages, and calls. Even the governor reached out, expressing support while urging her to act swiftly to control the narrative. Deputy Chief Maria Lopez entered Rachel's office, her expression grim. She placed a thick stack of papers on the desk. "The union's already pushing back," Lopez said. "They're claiming Myers followed protocol." Rachel's jaw tightened as she scanned the documents. There was no protocol for what he did, she said firmly. It was bias plain and simple. Lopez hesitated. How do you want to handle this? The press is circling, activists are planning protests, and Myers isn't backing down. He's claiming he was just doing his job. Rachel exhaled slowly. Schedule a meeting with Myers, she said decisively. And arrange a press conference. If he wants to defend his actions, he can do it in front of me and the public. The press conference was packed. Cameras flashed as Rachel stood at the podium. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. Last night's incident was a stark reminder of the work we must do to eliminate bias in law enforcement, she began. Effective immediately, Officer Myers is suspended pending a full review. A reporter raised a hand. Director Harrison, how do you respond to claims that you misused your authority? Rachel's gaze was unwavering. I didn't misuse my authority, I exercised it to correct a wrong. If holding my officers accountable makes me a target, so be it. The room erupted in applause. Later that evening, Rachel passed the spot where the incident had occurred. The once flickering streetlight now shone brightly, illuminating the path ahead. Change was slow, but Rachel knew this was just the beginning. She was ready for the fight ahead, determined to build a system rooted in justice and fairness. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained and press the bell icon for updates. Your support helps us share impactful stories like this one.